Welcome to Doctor on Call with your host, Doc Griffin. The doctor will be with you momentarily. Our guest this evening is legendary composer Harry Manfredini. Warning: the following interview is a potential choking hazard. Please keep away from children, babies, and pets. This is not a toy. Doc Griffin, paging Doc Griffin, you're needed in the OR, stat.
And thank you very much, Nurse Wicked. My name is Doc Griffin, and I'd like to welcome everybody here this evening into our surgical theater. Today, our patient is going to be someone who is suffering from chronic creativity. And we'll be able to talk to him about that. And of course, many more things. He is a composer, over 4 decades worth, over 160 credits for movies, television, and music. So please, welcome to the doctor's office, Harry Manfredini.
Hi there.
And a very good evening to you, sir. I'm sure that we'll have other discussions coming up with... I've had a lot of people email me and DM me about talking about a certain movie with a hockey mask guy, but I'm more interested in the start. I'm more interested in seeing, where everything began. Now, were you born on the East Coast?
No, I was born in Chicago.
Oh, okay, Windy City, very nice.
Very nice.
And I've always been a fan of going out to Chicago when I can. I live a little bit farther away from it, but when you were growing up, what was the first thing that caught your eye about music?
Well, I can tell you. I'll give you the long answer. This way, you can have a sandwich or something. Music sort of always spoke to me from the time I was very young. I'm Italian, obviously, and both my parents are Italian. Both my parents were born in Italy. So you pretty much, as soon as you could hold one in your hand, they had you an accordion. So I started studying the accordion. The influences that I had was, my father was a huge Italian opera fan. So we listened to a lot of Puccini, Verdi, and stuff like that at home. My brother, who's older than I am, he was a progressive jazz fan, Stan Kenton and stuff like that. Okay. And my mother and I watched films all the time with my mother. So all three of those influences got me going. And from the time I was very small, even when I was just playing the accordion, somehow or other, you would think I'm making this up, but I'm telling you the truth. The music in films always spoke to me. So the films I would see were talking about, literally the classics, Alfred Newman, Miklos Rozsa, Bernard Herrmann, of course, and film people like that whose music in the films really spoke to me. And as a child, I just really, that was something I always wanted to do. I wanted to write music for films. It took me forever to get there, but it was a dream that I had. And I think one of the most interesting aspects of this, and I tell the story a lot, is that I used to imagine that I had, for lack of a better term, sort of a magic piano. And my parents also bought a piano for me too. Sort of a magic piano. And this piano could not only be a piano, but it could be drums, or it could be trumpets, or it could be whatever instrument I wanted it to be. And then I would imagine a film being projected over my head on a wall, and I could sit at this magic piano and create music as I saw fit. And what's weird about it is that I'm sitting in a room right now. You can't see it. I suppose if I turn the phone around, there's a giant screen on the wall and a magic piano that's hooked to 7 different computers, and I can pretty much write any sound that I want. So be careful what you dream, I suppose. So anyway, I mean, it's something that I wanted to do my whole life, and then subsequently I learned to play the saxophone and the clarinet and flute, and started playing in a band, started playing jazz. But so all of that, got me going and got me interested in music. And once I mean, when I was in high school, we didn't have a band, but I was playing probably 6 nights a week, playing what they called sock hops in those days. And I actually was working in recording studios with people who would come through Chicago and go into the recording studio and play on their demos or whatever they were trying to do. So, I mean, this was back when they called record hops also, because people would come into town with their record, Bobby Darin or Frankie Avalon or who else? I mean, I played with Sam, what's his name? Wow, I'm getting older. Sam Cooke.
Really?
And people like that. Yeah, Sam Cooke and Dusty Springfield. People like that would come into town with their records and give them out to the kids. And invariably, they'd end up doing a song with the band, and I was in the band there. So I played with all these people when I was just, 16 years old. So it was sort of cool. And then at that point, that's when I got out of high school and decided to start really studying music in college more seriously.
So your magic piano actually it was the forerunner to the to the synthesizer and the soundboards that we know right now.
Exactly. And I had no idea that any of that was ever going to happen. But that's the thing that believe me, I'm more amazed about it than anyone else. I just go like, that's really hard to believe, because literally, I don't know if I can turn the phone around. Hold on a second.
Okay.
Can you see? Up on the wall there is a large screen TV, which is doing nothing at the moment. But down there is it's kind of dark in here. There's a keyboard and all kinds of computers and everything all around the room. So, that's it. Like I said, it amazes me more than anyone else.
So, at an early age, you were able to, when you were sitting there watching the movies, you were able to find the hook that music gave to a moving picture.
Yes, it spoke to me. Yes.
So literally, and a lot of people don't get it, because music is normally supposed to be the subtle art of manipulation, getting the audience to either be scared or laugh or be sad or happy. And I'm just wondering, is there any one movie that really pulled your strings?
Oh, in those days, they all did. I think one of the things I do now and have been doing for years is I do lectures at colleges in music departments and with young composers, kids who want to write film music or who just want to write music. And I try to explain to them that being a film composer, you're really about 85 to 90% dramatist. Your obligation is to the film, and your job is to make the drama work, whether that drama is a comedy or a scary film or something that makes you cry, something that makes you laugh, anything like that. That your job is to create something that delivers what the director and the writer intended. It's not like you're writing a concerto where you're trying to show how cool you are at the violin or clarinet or whatever it happens to be. Here, you're writing your emotions for sure, but here you're attaching to a physical thing that is the movie, and you could be the greatest composer in the world and not be a very good film composer. And likewise, you could be a very good film composer and not be a very good classical composer or even a songwriter for that matter.
Well, I think that really shows. One of my favorite scores that you did was for Time Master, and that one is all over the place. And if it wasn't there for the movie wouldn't be as good as it was. It was. I thought it was a decent movie, but it was made all the more better with the score that you provided, and that score is literally all over the place. One of the major complaints that I have about some people who are scoring, especially with horror themes, is that they get onto one riff and they stay with it and they never go away from it except for throwing stings in there.
Right.
And
Time Master was an exceptional movie and a real joy to score because of exactly what you just said. It's I suppose it's a children's adventure film.
Yeah.
If I had to put a genre on it, but it deals with a boy who's an orphan, and he's trying to find his parents, and we go through all periods of time. He goes to we go to the Wild West, we go to prehistoric, we go to the future, we go all over the place. So consequently, it required a number of techniques and styles and harmonic use, and yet I tried to keep the theme permeated the whole film, but it was always in a different style, I suppose is the term, of the period. I mean, the Western music was Western, but there's still certain themes permeated the whole film. I'm very proud of that score. That's why I bought it. Well, God bless you, young man. Yeah, it was just put out, I believe, by I'm trying to think of the record label. It's put out. Pretty much anybody can buy it now.
I'll share this because I really don't share much because my alter ego and my real life I try to keep separate. But I'm a writer by trade, and when I'm into something that I know is going to be big and sweeping, not like a short story, but like a novella or a novel or a long-term piece, I will plug in Time Master and put it on and let it run, because it's not jolting, it's not disjointed. The music flows one to the other, and it's
wow.
I think honestly, it's kind of like a shot in the arm to me, because I love to have music around me, especially when I'm writing, because it's so funny. My wife's a writer too. She can't stand to have any noise. She wants it completely quiet. And me, I want it as loud and rowdy as possible, because then it makes me focus. Music more so. And yeah, I just thought I'd share that, because I do intermittently switch off between that and your House 1, House 2 soundtrack.
Well, there's another set of movies where I was allowed to do all kinds of things above and beyond. First of all, it was a comedy film, more of a kids horror film. I mean, they're I don't know if you'd call them a horror film, but they were comical. And I mean, how many times in your life are you going to write for a baby pterodactyl, or a worm dog, or the Arnold the Barbarian, or the cowboy, the skeletal cowboy, Slim, I think they called him.
Oh yeah, the one John Aston did.
Right. I mean, that's what I'm saying, is that's the kind of movie that you just relish as a composer, because it's like, oh man, there's so many ways I can go, and so many things that I can do. It's a rich story to start with, So, by the way, now that I found out you're a writer, do you write scripts, or do you write novels, or what?
No, I'll be honest. I have written a couple of scripts. One got a look, nothing big, but yeah, most of the time I'm normally writing short stories for people to turn into audio plays online.
I see. But, well, if you don't call me to do your movie, I can see you. I can point to you right here. So be very careful.
Are you kidding me? Yes, you would be the first one, because it would be here. I'm putting this in your hands, and I'm sure just by the other movies that you've done, and there have been a lot. I even went back and watched some of the made for TV stuff, and there's a lot of ebb and flow, and I can see the ones where they took off the reins and said, just do it.
Cool. Which I'm dying to find out which one of those are, because I can tell you TV is a little bit different than feature film.
Oh yeah, and we'll certainly get into that. But I want to get back to the 16-year-old Harry Manfredini. That's playing with Sam Cooke. That I'm guessing that you're going. You're entering in college. You're working through college at the same time that you're doing the second job, because I'm sure there's people around you that said music's not going to get you anywhere. You need a real job, so you got to go to school.
No, that's not the case. I was a music major, and my father said, if that's what you want to do, let's go for it. Because I was doing very well. I mean, I was doing very well, playing 5-6 jobs a week. So I basically was paying for my tuition and stuff like that. The shocking thing to me, and this always cracks people up, is that I went to DePaul University in Chicago. Someone's calling me right now. But I just got rid of that. Okay. I went to DePaul University in Chicago, and I went into the music department. And you got to remember, okay, so here was my experience: Puccini, Stan Kenton, progressive jazz, and playing, record hops. Okay, I had an idea of harmony. I had an idea of certainly great music, but I didn't know. I didn't have a great theoretical understanding of music or how music works or anything like that. It was something that I wanted to do. I mean, I went, oh man, I'm going to try to learn everything I can. And for some crazy reason, there were 3 or 4 guys who were at DePaul University who liked me. I don't know why, but they did. And we became really good friends. And they introduced me to Stravinsky and Bartók and Webern and Lutoslawski and you name all of the great classical great composers, going all the way back to Bach and before Bach and all the way into the wildest contemporary music you can imagine. And my head almost exploded. I mean, I just went, oh my God, I mean, I am just, my mind exploded. And I just went, holy crap, I've got a lot of catching up to do, you know.
So,
and
when did you put it together?
Well, where I put it together was going to DePaul and going to there every day. I mean, I was given a lot of music, and I would say I am getting voice messages like crazy. I don't know where they're coming from, but I'll deal with them after we're done. So anyway, I basically grabbed the scores from the library to these things, put myself in a library, and sat there almost every single day, would take records home and listen to every one of these pieces. I mean, I probably listened to the Rite of Spring every day for 3 years. The Copland Symphony No. 3, the William Schumann Symphony No. 3, Lutoslawski, Penderecki, all these people to try to understand, holy smoke, there's a whole bunch of music that I never even thought existed or even understood how that music was written. So it took me about 5 years to do that. And one of the professors there were, this is pretty funny, because I was a player. I played saxophone. Okay, so yeah. I was supposed to play saxophone. That was supposed to be my major instrument. But anyway, at DePaul, and probably pretty much still a little bit there, although now they have a really good jazz program and a film scoring program that's quite good. But when I was there, if you were a jazz player, you were just one notch higher than a serial killer. I mean, that's how much they look down on you. So I had just gotten my new Stan Getz mouthpiece, and I was cooler than cool, and walked into my first saxophone lesson and played something. The teacher says, "Well, play me something." So I just played him a bunch of riffs on some tunes and stuff like that, and he said to me, "Well," he says, "you have an excellent sense of rhythm. But we've got to get rid of that mouthpiece, and we've got to change your sound so that you sound like this." And then he started to play, and oh my God, I'm telling you, I almost screamed. It was that I don't know what you know classical saxophone sounds like, but it doesn't sound anything like Stan Getz.
Oh,
so
sure, yeah.
At that point, the next day, I transferred out of saxophone, and I became a percussion major because he told me I had good rhythm. So I figured, hell, maybe I can learn to play percussion. So I ended up being a sort of a percussion major for my years there. And what was also nice is the band director, and this also stems from my saxophone playing. The first day, because I had never played in a band, I was playing gigs. I wasn't playing in a high school band or anything like that. So I sat down and they had all this music in front of me, and I'm going, holy smoke, this stuff is hard. I got to play this and read it and everything. So anyway, the first day at band rehearsal, The band director, Tom, his name was Tom Famish, a wonderful man, uh, a man with a lot of vision. Anyway, we were playing something, and I was stumbling all over this part, and he stopped everything, and he goes, "Could I just hear the tenor saxophone?" And I went, "Oh no."
Uh-oh.
He goes, bar 14 or whatever it was. So I started to play, and he just, he looked at me like, "Oh my God, that's awful." And so he put down the baton and walked out of rehearsal. And I went, "Oh my God, I'm in deep trouble." Anyway, subsequent to that, he took me in, and I tried to play and stuff like that. But he said to me, he says, "I think you could conduct." So literally, studying all those scores and things, he let me conduct the band. I can't believe it, but he let me conduct the band, and for like 3 years, I was the band director. I mean, I was doing all the conducting. He had a heart problem at one point where I pretty much did everything, did all the concerts, and picked the music and stuff like that. It was really cool. So anyway, that was sort of another wonderful accident that happened to be there. And subsequently, I went on to I got a master's degree from Western Illinois University, and in music theory. Make a note here, the fact that I never did any writing, I never did any film composing. I was just learning, and I got a master's in music theory, and I taught at Western for a couple years, and then I came to Chicago and taught for a couple years, and I wasn't very good. I was a good teacher, but it just wasn't into me, and then I went on the road for a little while. And subsequently, I realized when I was teaching that if you were going to be a teacher, you had to have a doctorate. You couldn't having a master's degree wasn't enough. You didn't make enough money. You worked way too hard. So anyway,
well, one of the things that I want to know, I want to get a quick grocery list here. By the time that you had graduated from DePaul, how many instruments could you play, and can you list them?
Oh, I played the woodwinds. I played saxophone, clarinet, and flute. I mean, I'm not a pianist. I can play the piano. I mean, I know the high notes are at one end, the low notes are at the other end. But and I could play accordion, but I couldn't play. And I could play percussion a little bit. I got pretty good on mallets and things like that. So I could play. I actually played a couple of jobs on drums. So anyway, I could do that, but I got a degree in theory from Western and taught there for 2 years. Then I said, well, I've got to get a doctorate. So the one thing that I really loved doing was conducting. The point is, at this point, I never wrote a note or anything like that. A, I was afraid. B, I just never had the opportunity. So I applied to 4 schools that had conducting majors. Oddly enough, all 4 corners of the United States, the University of Florida, Columbia University in New York, Stanford in Northern California, and USC in Southern California. And the only one that gave me a scholarship was Columbia. So I went to New York. And once again, a wonderful thing happened. I became friends with a fellow named Bill Ramal, who was a huge arranger and a writer in town, who, again, something he liked about me. And I was still playing the saxophone in New Jersey at a kind of a Sopranos hangout, if you know what I'm saying.
Oh, yeah.
But and I played jazz there and put myself through school. And he sort of took me under his wing, and I started doing record dates with him. And one day he said to me, as we were driving back from New York into Jersey, and he said to me, "Well, what is it that you want to do?" And I said, if I had my druthers, I'd want to write film music. And he looks at me and he goes, "Well, what are you going to write that Jerry Goldsmith or Henry Manfredini is already writing?" And I went, "Well, I don't know." I said, "But you asked me what it is that I wanted to do, and I told you." And he goes, "Okay, if that's what you want to do, here's the next 5 things you've got to do tomorrow." And I went, "Okay." And I went back to the studio, because the recording studio we were working at, and the fellow who owned it was making movies, just kind of as a hobby.
Okay.
And he said, "Tell him you'll write the theme song to his movie for free." And I said, "Okay." And he says, "How's he going to say no?" So he didn't know. He doesn't know you.
At this point.
He doesn't know. He doesn't. I was 20, maybe 28, 29, something like that.
Wow. Okay, please continue.
So anyway, so I wrote the song, and it was a oddly enough, it was a porn film, and so I wrote this.
Is that Through the Looking Glass?
No, the Through the Looking Glass is later. I never wrote the score. I just wrote the theme song. But basically, I wrote a Bo Diddley song, junk, like that.
Okay.
Anyway, he really liked it. And what was really strange was we recorded on Wednesday afternoons, because I had the rhythm section from Raisin in the Sun, which was right down the street on 43rd Street, I believe. They would come up. They had nothing to do between the matinee and the evening performance, so they came up, and I'm writing a bass part for Bob Crenshaw. I mean, really great players. Anyway, they really liked me, so I was playing piano on that. Anyway, we ended up taking that porn song, and we turned it into a shoe commercial, and we used it for that. And the engineer said, "Wow," he goes, "I have a friend who needs some demos. Would you do some demos?" I said, "Sure, I'll do them for free." Because this is what Bill told me to do. He says, "You will make people indebted to you, and something will happen." Okay. So I did a couple of demos of songs for this guy, who was a pretty successful songwriter. Anyway, so we're mixing one of the demos one day in the hallway, and there was no vocal yet. It was just the track. And I had played alto flute on it, and we had some strings. We had all sorts of stuff. And some guy was walking through the hall who was a friend of the owner. He walks in and he goes, "That sounds like film music." And I go, "Oh," and I went, "Thanks." He goes, "I'm making a film. Could you do a track for my film?" "Sure, I'll do it for free." So I did a track for him. The next thing that happened was a friend in New York saw this ad in the paper called, I think it's called Backstage. It's a showbiz paper. Mm-hmm. And it said composer needs assistant. So I go, okay, maybe I can see what that's about. And I have 3 pieces of tape. I have these demos. I have the porn song. I have the shoes, and I have the shoe commercial. And plus, I have some. I ended up actually finally taking a composition class at Columbia with a professor, Don Fornudo, whose name was the composer. great teacher, and inspired me. Literally got the fear out of me, and along with Bill Ramel.
Okay.
Anyway, so I walk up to this guy, Arlen Ober, who was a film composer, and he looked at my stuff and listened to my tapes and said to me, "Here, I'm working on this movie. Orchestrate this for tomorrow." Okay, so I took it home and I orchestrated it, brought it back, and he goes, "Okay, this is really good. Now orchestrate these for tomorrow." Okay, so I went home, I did those, and so the next thing you know, we did this film, and the next thing we did a what they call an industrial thing for Busch Gardens, where I got to conduct a 50-piece orchestra in a recording studio in New York City, just literally just stuff falling in front of me as it happens. Anyway, so Arlen and I worked together for a while on a number of pictures, and we did, believe it or not, in the 1 year we did a movie called Angel and Big Joe, which was one of Paul Sorvino's first movies.
Okay.
Which won the Academy Award for Best Short Documentary. And we did another movie called The End of the Game, which was another documentary about Africa and poaching and stuff like that. And that also won an Academy Award. The movie did, not our score. But anyway, Arlen said, "Okay, well, I can't I got to leave. I've got to go to California. I think this is my chance." So I'm left alone basically in New York with the only people I knew were people that Arlen connections. I had no connections. So all at once, one day, a phone rings in the office and it says, "Are you the company that did Angel and Big Joe?" And I went, "Yes." He goes, "Well, we have this film we'd like you to do." I said, "That's great. Let's do it." So we do it, and it turns out to be a guy named Gary Templeton. I noticed you just put up my website thing. You see all these little children's films that Gary Templeton. I've done a whole bunch of films for him. Anyway, it was a big success. He really liked it, and he says to me, "I know a guy in Connecticut who's making a movie, and he's looking for a composer. Maybe you could do that." I said, "Great, yeah, I'd love to meet him." And sure enough, turns out to be some guy named Sean Cunningham, who was doing a couple of children's films. And the third film we did together was something called Friday the 13th. And now you and I are talking. How's that for an answer?
I'll be honest with you. I've never heard of Friday the 13th.
All right. It comes right after Thursday the 12th.
Oh yeah. Now, I do want to.
What I'm saying is that it took all those things, all that study at DePaul, all the theory, all the composition with Don Fornuto, all the working in the studios, all those things all put together got me at that one spot, that one place where I was able to do what I needed to do.
Well, and I just want to go back real quick.
Sure.
What was the feeling like when you stepped up to the podium? You have a 50-piece orchestra waiting for your command.
Right.
What does that feel like? Go in a little deeper for us on that.
Well, I mean, you have to understand that. I mean, I've conducted at DePaul, I've conducted at Western, and I conducted at Columbia. So it wasn't like that. Wasn't I'm just going like, I can't believe I'm actually conducting a piece of film music as opposed to a piece that somebody else wrote. This is a piece that I helped write. I orchestrated. Some of which I actually wrote myself. So that was pretty cool. And what was really nice is the musicians there in New York, most of them really liked me. We got along really well, and musicians want to work. And when they saw that I was scoring these little children's films and eventually a couple of things for Sean, they were more than happy to play for me in it because we always had a really good time, and I had huge respect for those players. You'd be surprised. Some composers look at players as minions. I don't know, just the worker bees. To me, their ability and their skill and talent is, because I'm not the player. I even though I worked as a player, I'm not the player. Anywhere near the player these people are.
And I know a lot of musicians, and definitely in show business, they are the hardest working people. People might say it's actors or producers, but no, I really have to throw it to the musicians, because it's really hard to get out there and make a name for yourself. I mean, there are tons of documentaries out right now that talk about how powerful and extraordinary certain studio musicians were. And
there's no question about it.
Yeah, and how everybody else in the business respected them, but they were virtually unknown.
Of course. And some of the greatest people that started out as studio players. There's I don't know if you've heard of this guy, John Williams.
Yeah.
He was the #1 studio piano player out here for a long time. I mean, he's a hell of a pianist.
I'm hoping that someday, he'll get a, I don't know, some type of award for the stuff that he does, because he's pretty good at it too.
Yeah, he's. It would really be nice if they finally gave him a good movie to score.
Oh, I tell you, that is law. That's something that. Well, no, let's not make it easy on him. Let's make him earn it.
Right. Yeah.
But so now you're still doing a little side music. You meet up with Cunningham after doing some of your freebies. Now, did you ever contemplate just breaking stride and heading west too?
Yes, but way later. It came to the point. I'm trying to think of what Friday. I'm moving around. Hold on one second. I don't know if you noticed that I'm moving around, but I'm trying to think of what year it would have to be. Oh well, let's even get weirder than that. Why is my hand in front of the screen? Oh, I see. Okay, there we go. What's even weirder than that? You've seen the movie Friday the 13th. There's a song in there called "Sail Away, Tiny Sparrow."
Mm-hmm.
Well, that was written when Sean gave me the movie to do. There was it was a scene in a diner, and there was a song playing, and they had covered it with a Dolly Parton song, and it we couldn't use the Dolly Parton song. We didn't have any budget for something like that, so I just said, well, I'll just write some sort of cockamamie country song that works for the diner. And so I thought, and somewhere in that Dolly Parton song, it was "Sail Away, Fly Away, Little Bluebird." So I was thinking to myself, "Sail Away, Tiny Sparrow" would be a good title. And it was about a girl who fell in love in high school and didn't work out, and she was leaving home. typical country song. So anyway, I wrote that song, and everybody, of course, wow, that's really a cool song. And I go like, whatever, I wrote it like, a couple hours in the evening, words and music and everything. So I ran into this friend of mine who, another thing that I did in New York was I worked for a record company and I did all their demos. Some artists would come in, somebody who could sing or wrote songs, and we would record, their songs and then do some demos or whatever. And I met this fellow named John Briggs, who actually sang a few songs for me in films. Because I like Johnny, he had a great voice, real sweet tenor kind of country voice. And he says to me, Harry, you wrote that country song. And he goes, yeah. And I says, yeah, I wrote a couple other ones too for other movies. He goes, well, I got some country songs. And he says, we should try to do like a little off-Broadway musical. I said, it's cool. Sounds like a good idea. So we got together. We put together some songs. And we had about 13. We had figured out this idea for a show. And I mean, I'm going back on my life here and I'm cracking myself up how things happen. So we have these songs and we had this idea for a show. And he says, do you know anybody who has any money? And I said, well, yeah, I know one person who's got a lot of money. I said, because I had done some orchestration for him. He had an orchestra. Listen to this. He had a lot of original instruments from the colonial period. Old clarinets, French horns that didn't have any valves on them. Like if you were going to change key, you had to change the pipe in the French horn, and harpsichord and things like that.
Wow.
It was the Colonial Music Society or Federal Music Society. Anyway, so he had me orchestrate some music that was written in the United States during the federal period, which basically is Handel. That's what was popular at that time. So it was basically Handel, Bach, that sort of style. But anyway, he had a lot of money. So I said, I know this one guy. And so I said, let's go over, and he said, maybe he'd be interested. So he says, yeah, why don't you come over? Let's see what you got. So we sat down. John brought his guitar. I played on the piano, and we did our 13 songs. Bam! He goes, I love this idea, and he was ready to put $3 million right into the musical right then and there. And we walked out of that building going like, it's supposed to be really hard to do. You're supposed to run around New York for like 3 years with this idea. We walk into one building and walk out, with somebody who wants to do this. So anyway, we ended up doing a musical called Play Me a Country Song, in which that Sail Away Tiny Sparrow was one of the songs. And like 98% of the musicals on Broadway, it ran really well for a couple of weeks of previews. The audience loved it. Everybody loved it. And the critics did not like it. And so it went down to tubes. And subsequently after that, and at that point, I was already had done Friday 1, 2, and 3. I think we were getting ready to do 4. And that's when I moved to California. So it was like, had to be like 82 or 83, something like that.
Now, what some of the people watching and listening right now might not know was that in the time of 50s, 60s, 70s, New York was an incredibly bustling place for movies as well. Not all of it had moved out to the left coast. So
that was one of the reasons why I left, because I mean, I was doing very well in New York. I don't want to say I was a big fish, but I was a fairly large fish in a very small pond. Uh, I was doing 5 pictures a year, which in New York, that weren't that many pictures that were completed in New York, in a year, or done, post production. Most of them were out here. So, I mean, out here, I lose 5 pictures a week, whereas in New York, you were lucky to get 5 pictures in a year. So it's a huge difference. And now, of course, you've got Canada and other places like that. But at the time, yeah, New York was quite the place. As a matter of fact, our office for a while was in the Brill Building, which was the original Tin Pan Alley, where Carole King and all those people wrote all their hits. So
Okay.
it was pretty cool. So
Now, of course, you've not only scored movies, but you had some time scoring for television.
yes,
Are there any inherent differences between doing the two besides time?
mm, typically in a film, the director is typically the boss. You're dealing with the director, and he is the ringmaster. He's in charge of everything. Whereas in a TV show, more often than not, the producer is the person in charge. The director is often like a composer, a hired hand who comes in and makes the film, decides on the direction and the acting, etc., etc. But the producer is the person who you're dealing with more often than not. The other thing that happens more often in TV is you're on a quicker schedule, which you just mentioned, but typically there's the dreaded temp score, the temporary score, which by the time the composer gets on the show, they've already fallen in love with it, and basically they're asking you, please stay as close to this temp score as you can without without garnering a lawsuit, and so whereas in a film you may have a temp score, but they don't always fall in love with it. Believe me, that I've been on films where they fell in love with the temp score, and it's that's kind of tough to do.
So it's the old, we want this exact song, but different.
Yeah, we want exactly this, but not this. Right, and it's difficult sometimes. So other times, I as a composer, a film composer, I don't mind temp scores very much. I actually often I actually embrace them, because quite often your director or your producer, whoever happens to be talking to you about the music, they don't speak music. They don't understand what an oboe sounds like, or what something sounds like, or how what kind of chords these are, what kind of orchestration they want. So quite often the way they speak to you is they're saying, I really like this cue. Could you give me something like this? And it's almost better for me to go, oh, I see what, and then I'll go, oh, I see what you like about this piece. And what's interesting, though, to come around, I don't know if it's full circle, but coming around back to Time Master, when we did Time Master, one of the 2 pieces of music that I had, the opening credits Jim Glickenhaus had put in a piece by Ennio Morricone. Okay, and it was I can't think of the movie that it was from, but it was Ennio Morricone definitely, and there was this solo trumpet, and I said, "Oh, I know what you like about this," and he goes, "What is it?" And I said, "You like that trumpet because it's what we call off mic. In a concert performance, you would call it off stage. The trumpet player would go, they would leave the door open to the stage, but he'd be playing off the stage so that it sounds like it's coming from afar.
Yes.
You know, it's coming from somewhere else." And I said, you hear that trumpet as a call from the past. You know, it's like an atavistic call from the past. And Glickenhaus says to me, "That's exactly what I like about it. That I love that." I said, "Okay." I said, "You're definitely gonna have that." I said, "But there's some other things that I want to put in." I said, "I want to put in sounds that are going forwards and going backwards." I said, "Because our movie changes time periods. We go to the West. We go into the future." So I said, "I want to incorporate stuff that's like going backwards and stuff that's going forwards, but I definitely want that trumpet." And if you, when you have time, listen to that opening, and you'll hear that trumpet off stage trumpet in the opening credits of Time Master. So I mean, that's a perfect example of Jim Glickenhaus not being able to say, "Oh, I want a trumpet from the past." He just played me a piece that he really liked.
Well,
But
it's a
I was able to read. I was able to read what he liked about it.
yeah, it's a typical producer thing of I don't know exactly what I like, but I'll tell you when I hear it.
Right. That I never want to hear, because I go like, "Hey, look, I'm going to write this once or maybe twice, and maybe at the most 3 times, but I can't keep writing it until you know what you like." That's why a lot of times the temp score is really handy, because I like this, and I go, "Oh, I see what you like," and that gives me a place to start. Whereas if a guy just says, "I'll know what I like when I hear it," that's a red flag for me. You
Irritating
know,
as hell, I would guess.
yeah.
I just want to let the chat know. Coming up will be the Q&A. So if you have any questions for Mr. Manfredini, please do make sure to get those ready for me, and we will ask him. Of course, I do want to do some quick shilling. Please do make sure and stop by Harry Manfredini's website. It is www.harrymanfredini.com. It's down in the show links. And of course, now, are you still able to purchase soundtracks from the website, or at least have a leader going to it?
What I have is I have a number of soundtracks there that you can listen to cues. They're just selected cues from different scores. One of the fun ones is there's something called Music from the Couch. There's Volume 1 and Volume 2. And basically, those are cues that I wrote for TV shows. In other words, I didn't write them when I was on a couch, but you probably heard them in a movie when you were on the couch. You know, "Oh yeah, I remember that." You know, and there are also some cues that I wrote as demos trying to get a movie, but I didn't get them. But they're still nice cues, so I put them in there. They're not related specifically to any one film. I've actually got a third album I haven't had time to put together yet, but there'll be a third one of those. But if you wanted to buy any one of those albums, there's a link to a place called Dark Delicacies, which is, if you ever come out here, it's the coolest store there ever was. It's in Burbank, And if you say to them, "Hey, I want a copy of Swamp Thing," or "I want a copy of Time Master," or whatever movie you want, and anything that's on that website, you could buy the CD too.
Well,
So
if you want to find out why I rave so much about it, you can also hit up Amazon. You can do a digital download for $9 or $10, and
of Time Master, yes.
yeah, and
Yes.
it's definitely well worth it because it is incredibly thematic. It's and I'll say this. I mean, Danny Elfman may have won an Oscar for scoring, but I just particularly don't really like his stuff because it always sounds the same. I can't say the same for you because of the fact that I've listened to about 8 or 9 of your soundtracks, and it changes. There's you put personality to whatever movie that you're writing.
Well, thank you so much. It's a different movie. It should have a different sound. There's a what is the movie that I really like the score to? Red. It's an Elfman score. The Red Scorpion. Is that what it's called?
I do not know, but I will.
I think it's one of Danny's best scores. Red. Oh yeah, it's Red something.
I'm pulling up a discography as we speak.
Yeah, I think it's Red.
Let's see here. Well, actually, I kind of liked the Wanted soundtrack. That wasn't really bad. Mars Attacks I hated. Let's see here. I guess he scored a couple of them too, but I'm not seeing anything with red in the title.
Yeah, it was a while back.
Okay, well, and not to disrespect him. I mean, he's welcome to show up anytime.
No, I'll tell you right now, it's a really, really good score. Red something.
The closest. No, I never promised you a rose garden is definitely not one.
No, you got to go back.
I'll put it in here. Let's see. The Red Dragon score?
Red Dragon. There you go.
Well, I didn't like the movie, but yeah, I like the score.
Yeah, I like that score a lot.
Yeah, I think that's very pursuant to the horror chiller drama setup. Now,
yes.
I did want to ask about, do you find yourself, is it more to just the work to test yourself in genres, or is there a genre that you prefer?
There's each one of them has a what's the word I'm looking for? An attraction to me. The horror genre, because I have to grow where I'm planted. I get a lot of those. So the nice thing about horror music is that there's almost no holds barred. I mean, you can do almost anything you want. You can come up with any sound you want. You could use any kind of voicing or harmonic progression or something that has no harmonic sense to it at all. I mean, something that's just really effects. You can do almost anything, so it's wide open. Whereas if you're doing a drama or you're doing a comedy or something like that, you're really not constricted, you're really held to being in a key. Chord progressions have to make sense. Although if it's a comedy, sometimes your chord progression doesn't make sense, and that's sort of what makes it funny. But there's other things that are enjoyable about doing that. I mean, coming up with a really great little theme that makes someone cry, or I mean, I did one of the Lifetime movies about the Amber Alert, the Amber story, where it was an incredibly sensitive theme and very sparse, very light, but at the same time, it was a chance to do something that was simple, but we used to say simple but eloquent at the same time.
Sure.
It's easy. It's easier to do a big bombastic thing, I think, than it is to just do something that's so just is almost medical in its procedure, that you have to be very, you could easily overdo it. I did a film about a young man who he lives in a wheelchair his whole life, and he climbed the what's it called, the big mountain in the Yellowstone Park, Anyway, it's called Wampler's Ascent, and it's a big, huge, heroic thing, but at the same time, it has little tiny introspective pieces where it took him. He climbed it, and it's taller than 2 Empire State Buildings, and he climbed it 4 to 6 inches at a time by just doing pull-ups from a wheelchair.
Wow!
So you can imagine the strength and fortitude that took. So, but at the same time, it's amazing.
El Capitan.
El Capitan. Thank you. It's a wonderful movie.
And it's not fiction. It's an actual documentary.
No, it's absolute true. Yeah, Stephen Wampler, wonderful man. Runs a camp for kids who are basically, he did this to show them that, look, you can climb El Capitan even though your whole life you're in a wheelchair.
And well, I mean, stories like that are amazing. Is there when you go into it and somebody says, okay, we're going to do a drama, we're going to do a comedy, we're going to do a thriller, we're going to do a horror, is there a checklist you have of the instruments that you would make exclusive to those genres?
No. I typically I don't the situation doesn't occur in the way you just described it. I mean, the picture is usually done when I see it. Not, we're going to make this, we've made this.
Okay.
From the time going back when I was a little kid and I wanted to score movies, for some reason or other, I always hear music in my head. I hear it all the time while when I was playing as a little kid. I could hear a score playing baseball or playing whatever I was playing, running around, just doing whatever it is. I could hear music in my head. And so when I see a movie, I'm very visually focused. So I see something and I start to hear things right away. And what instrument I pick, I mean, that may change. I'm okay with it changing, but I do hear something, and sometimes I go, oh no, I think this would be better this way. And then I go like that. And the director comes in and says, you're all wrong. And then I fix it, or change it. But it usually happens after I see it, not so much. Like, I don't like to really read a horror script because I don't want to know what's happening before I see the movie. I'm very afraid. I get scared at horror films So I want to get that same feeling that the audience gets, because they're only going to see it one time. So I want to see it that one time. I don't want to know that somebody's behind a door, or Jason is going to come out and chop somebody up.
Well, and I think, and I hate to be overly critical, but that's one of the
Go
things
ahead.
that I really criticize.
I can shut the phone off if you get too overly critical.
But that's one of the things that I heavily criticize the new horror movies. They're very, very low rent. It's like the only thing that they think music is good for is by playing those big musical stings,
right,
to try to get over their jump scares, and that's it. I mean, there's really
right.
no flow to it. I was wondering, do you find any frustration with seeing movies that are out today that really just don't use music as as a partnership to the actual movie?
First of all, I don't know if this shocks you or not or whatever, but I'm not a big horror film fan. I don't go see horror film. I don't even see that many films. If you want me to complain about a film, I can tell you that I went to see Dunkirk thinking it was going to be something really spectacular, and I ended up walking out at 40 minutes, and I got my money back because that was the worst film score I ever heard in my life. But
it was not sweeping, which it should have been.
Sweeping? It wasn't even.
No, it wasn't sweeping.
I think it was sleeping. I'm not sure if it was sleep.
Yeah.
I don't know. Whatever. It was horrible. I couldn't take it. I said, I've watched this movie for 45 minutes and I don't know anyone's name. How is that possible? So anyway, all that being said, I'm sure it was a wonderful movie for some people. I didn't like it. But there are other movies I like. But getting back to the question of horror films, one of the things that's changed a lot, and this permeates not just horror, but comedy and drama and almost all these other things, is the rise of effects, of sound, the rise of sound. When I do my lectures at the colleges, I always use this one scene as an example. Most people hadn't seen it, but especially kids at college. It's the Man with the Golden Arm with Frank Sinatra, and I said it's an Elmer Bernstein score, and great score. Oh, what a composer! Talk about a guy who can do anything. There's someone to study. He was the epic guy. He was the jazz guy. He was the comedy guy. He was the sensitive guy. Every possible genre you can imagine, he excelled in. And basically, I went to a lecture. He goes, "Hey, look, I can always write all those things. They just suddenly I was the epic guy, so I wrote epics. And then somebody gave me a Western to do, and suddenly I was the Western guy. Then I was the jazz guy. Then I did To Kill a Mockingbird, and I was the sensitive guy. And then I did Airplane, and I was the comedy guy." It's like but it's all the same guy. It's just you arrange the notes a different way, and suddenly it's funny.
Well,
anyway,
I think actors and composers have to be chameleons for whatever movies that they're a part of.
Right. There's a joke. There's a joke that a film composer can write like anybody except himself. But what I was going to say is getting back to the sound effects thing. There's a scene in this movie where it's a seedy hotel, okay? And the reason you can tell it's a seedy hotel because the E is flickering on and off. The neon in the E is broken. You know, it says hotel, but the E is sort of broken. So
Gotcha.
you see that. And then you see this Frank Sinatra walks into a room, and it's a pretty nothing hotel room. And he walks across the floor and he puts some stuff on a dresser and then, of course, lights up a cigarette, goes over and lies down on a really cheesy mattress on a springy bed, old metal frame bed, and smokes a cigarette. And there's music all over this scene, you know, that says, that talks about his character at that time, you know, that he's alone, that he's you know, a drug problem and down in the dumps, you know, that down in the dumps sounds so stupid, but he's down, okay? Uh, anyway, so I said, if they shot that movie now, I said, you wouldn't have any music. You would have the sound of that E clicking on and off, you know, like that sort of electrical sputtering sound of the E. I said, you would have every footstep and a creaking floor as he walked across the floor. Then, when he lit up the cigarette, you would hear the scrape of the match on the lighting thing. You would hear the sound of the burning sulfur. You would hear the sound of the fire on the cigarette. Then you would hear the footsteps going across, and then you would hear the sound of the mattress and the sound of the springs and everything, and probably even the sound of him puffing on the cigarette. I said they would load that thing up with so much real sound created that they could do, whereas a long time ago, they shot it MOS, mid-out sound, and the music covered the emotion. But the music said something about the emotion as opposed to the sound effects just giving you a reality. So, but now music, as music in some films now that you see, vis-a-vis Dunkirk, starts to sound more like the sound effect than it sounds to sound like music. I mean, to me, I thought one of the greatest parts of the score in Dunkirk were the bombs going off. I thought those bombs were fantastic, you know. But I mean, they've changed the attitude and the use of music has moved down in. I mean, not every movie, but it's moved down on the hierarchy of the importance of that piece of music. Now music has become in some cases and in some styles really more of drony and tone, you know, those things. That's the way music has changed in a film, you know. And also films move at a speed. Often, I mean, music takes time. You have to play a theme. Well, you got to have time to play a theme. Now cuts are faster. The audience, their attention span is shorter, so everything has to move faster. So sometimes what's nice is that the music can kind of smooth out all those cuts, but sometimes so does a drone. So we're back to that kind of thought.
Well, yeah, I can certainly see that there are. I mean, I I'm not going to call it brain surgery, but it can be very intricate to be able to do that. And I think that's one of the things that Hollywood, if they haven't lost, then they're certainly not using it as much as they were.
Well, it's very expensive. There's a Time Master CD. Uh, the uh, the cost of an orchestra, the cost of all the parts, players, the recording studio. It's a very expensive undertaking, and it's just that certain movies have become more percussive. Not also, and also the fact that they started throwing songs into movies, pop tunes and things like that, and which, to me, I think pushes you away from the film as opposed to bringing you in. On occasion, it's great, it really works, but it doesn't always work that way. I mean, why would you pay $12 to go hear a new Justin Bieber tune? I'm sorry, you can hear it on the radio for free. Why is that going to make the big difference in the movie? It's not. So,
well, and in an ironic way, ever since Easy Rider, a lot of people have been trying to sell soundtracks with popular music put into it as just another form of a revenue stream. And
right. Well, I mean, that's a perfect example. Is at the one time, remember when Miami Vice was the hottest TV show, and it was just loaded with great new tunes and stuff like that. Well, what it really does is puts a timestamp on that show. I mean, if there was just a regular score to Miami Vice, I think it would play more in syndication. But what happens is all at once, you're just putting, oh wait, is that Carly Simon song? Wow, this is from the 70s or 80s,
Yeah.
So it's just, that's what it is, It's okay if it's just one song, but if the whole score is consisting of a certain genre and style of music that time stamps it, it's just like, oh, look at the clothes they're wearing. Oh, they're wearing the newest, hippest clothes. Well, I'm sorry to say they're not new and hip anymore.
Yeah, linen suit jackets with rolled up sleeves.
Right. And so you see, there's all these different things. And let's face it, it's a business. It's not movie fun. It's the movie business. And so the object is to sell something that makes money, and so you can do something else. And sometimes you could do it with a great piece of film, and other times you do it with something that just catches on. Hey, Friday the 13th, perfect example.
Well, no,
it's just
I was
no one in their right mind believed that was going to turn into what it turned into.
Now, currently, now I know, and a lot of the people who are in the chat, they play the Friday the 13th video game. Now you transitioned.
I was wondering when that was going to come up.
Yep, and so you've been in transition, always finding something new to do. What is the difference between sitting down and scoring a movie or scoring a television show as opposed to scoring a video game where there are multiple paths?
Well, Friday the game, at least the first version of the game with the multiple players and things like that was a completely different thing for me. And first of all, again, like I said to you, I'm inspired visually. So basically, there's nothing to look at. They sent me a few examples of people playing games. Like, here's the way the game is going to look, and this is what's going to happen, and this will happen, or this could happen. But basically what I wrote for the first version of the game. Now there's a single player version, which is totally different. Is that I wrote a whole bunch of modular pieces that, for example, if let's say you and I were playing the game, okay, I don't know who you are, you don't know who I am, but we're playing the game, and you decide to go into one of the cabins and look around. Well, there would be music that would play for you. But let's say I decided I don't want to do that. I want to keep going in the woods and go to some other place. So I would have a completely different piece of music that would be playing for me. So that what I ended up writing was a whole carload of modular music, whether it was searching in a cabin, walking through the woods, holy crap, Jason is after me, Jason's going to kill me, all these kinds of things. Or, for example, one of the players is Jason. So does Jason, he moves and morphs to other places, and he senses fear and things like that. So I had different kinds of sounds for all those things, but I had to write them without looking at anything, just sort of like, well, how would that work? And basically, all the music really spins off of probably the first 3 or 4 films. The scores to that are the materials that I use for those films. Whereas with the single player is more of a challenge game in that you are Jason. You're Jason every time, and your object is to wipe out 4 counselors or 3 counselors, or given a situation, your job is to find various ways to off them. So that's a completely different set of things. Now, since I am not I'm not averse to promotion, we're about to release the CDs. I'm pretty sure it'll be a 2 CD set of the music from the game, and also the 2 vinyl album of the music from the game. But what I did was I created, for lack of a better term, game emulations. In other words, who in the world wants to listen to 65 kills in a row? It doesn't make for very interesting music. So what I did was I created a linear piece that went started out with like Jason searching, or maybe the counselor searching, and maybe finds something, and then goes and finds the key to the car, or the gasoline, or something for the boat, some way to escape. So what I created was a linear piece of music that starts at the beginning, goes through a few different events, and then eventually, usually ends in Jason killing you. So the album is really a set of cues that are made into a musical paragraph, so to speak, made up of all these little modular things, so that they make musical sense, story sense, as opposed to, like I said, 64 kills in a row, or an hour and a half of wandering around in the woods. I mean, who wants to listen to that? This way, each one of them is kind of a little story.
Well, and I know the game's been a little bit buggy. I know that they've been running into some legal issues lately, but I mean, it doesn't seem like it's on the verge of stopping. It might have stalled a little bit, but I mean, it sounds like things are going okay, because it seems like yeah, you've got continuous work on it.
Well, I hope so. From what I know is that it's what's sad about it is that it's been halted. From what I understand, this is totally from what I know, is that the additional materials, because I've seen the Grendel map, and I've seen the Uber JSON, and I've seen a number of those things that they've actually created. But because of this lawsuit, they were ordered to stop. So at the moment, they have all this stuff, but they can't put it into the game because they can't add any new content. But what they are doing is improving the gameplay, improving the servers so that the game would be less buggy, and then the single player will be enhanced and stuff like that. But anything up until, as far as adding new material, I'm not I'm not real sure about that. The only thing I'm sure about is the music. I know I've written a lot of music for the single player game, but at this point, and I did write some Jason X cues, and but evidently those are not going to see the light of day, at least until this lawsuit is resolved.
Yeah, well, I don't care what anybody says. I like Jason X. It was campy fun. It was definitely a good time. Now we do have a question from our chat room. They're asking, what is your next goal? You seemingly mastered the art of conducting, composing, not only for movies but for television and for video games. What haven't you checked off your list?
Well, I have one thing that I could tell you about, but then I'd have to shoot you.
It would be a mercy killing. That's okay.
I can't talk about it, but I've brought this topic up to a number of people, and they go like, "Holy shit, that's a good idea. That could really be fun." So that's one thing that I might do. There's an educational thing that I want to do, which is completely off the film scoring thing, although it involves film scoring and music that is filmic, if that's a word.
It is.
Well, it is now. I just used it. So it's an educational thing that I want to pursue. I was also thinking of having supper in a little while too, so I'm not sure. That's the next goal actually is supper. But those two, the one thing I can't talk about because it's a little, it's just in an embryonic stage. I think someday I would love to write a ballet. I happen to really love dance. And I think I'd really like to do that, and I've got some ideas about that. So, but that's, who knows if that's ever going to happen. You can't just go, "Hey, I think I'll write a ballet," but that's something I would like to do. I want to get better. I want to get better. I mean, and I really appreciate the compliments and everything, and it's always it doesn't fall on deaf ears. I really appreciate that, but I literally almost every day find something new that I'm learning, whether it's a harmonic thing or an orchestrational thing or just another approach to something. I still study classical music, usually really avant-garde music, as well as I guess you would call it kind of folk, sort of real hardcore folk music, not music that's pentatonic or something that changes modes. I mean, I'm going to get technical on you and stuff here, and there's nothing more than watching an audience glass over when you start getting technical. But not only that, but just even technical things with my computers and things. I mean, I probably picked up 2,000 new sounds in a week that I have to go in and just sit here and go like, oh wow, that is really cool, and how can I manipulate it? What does that mean? And I write it down and try to create something about that with that stuff. So I'm always in that process. I don't find myself going like, well, now I've got my bag that I'm in. I don't find that the case at all. I try to keep making that bag bigger.
Well, and I think that's a true testament to any artist, because once you sit back and rest on your laurels, then there's.
By the way, this is not a Heineken. This is a Pellegrino. So just in case you think I'm getting bombed here while we're.
Oh, that's quite all right. We don't encourage alcohol abuse, but we don't discourage consumption.
All right, there you go.
And let's see here. Wondering if you could say the phrase "All hail blue whale."
All hail the whale.
All hail blue whale.
All hail blue whale.
That's perfect. That's
okay. Now my question is, why would one want someone to say that?
There is a show that runs a series of cartoons called Gulf City, and they're an amazing bunch of guys. They created their own mythos about religion itself, and they praise the blue whale because the blue whale is the largest creature on planet Earth, so it must know something.
Oh, well, it's the largest creature we know that's on planet Earth.
Yeah, I'm not really looking forward to trying to to go down to the chasms in the ocean to see if there's anything bigger.
Well, you never know. You know these things. Deep Star 6.
Oh yes. Now,
you know, I'll give you. All hail blue whale, which is interesting. I was playing at a casino in Vegas. This game called Pai Gow, and it's basically you're playing against a dealer. There's 6 people and a dealer, and you're playing this game. And this girl who was dealing, she had just come over from Romania and had a very heavy sort of Russian Bulgarian accent. Okay, you know, and I'm not good at accents, but you know, oh, you are very good. You are a winner. You are a winner. Oh, very good. You win. You know, oh, I'm sorry, you lose. Very good. You win. You know, so we're all sitting there going like, this is like playing with Khrushchev or something, you know. Anyway, so I'm sitting at the table, and I said to her, I said, "Would you do me a favor? Because we're all, Americans, I guess is the word. All right, we're locals, and she's playing the game. And I said, "Would you do me a favor?" And she goes, "What do you want?" And I said, "Would you just say moose and squirrel?" And she goes, "Why you want me to say moose and squirrel?" And the table just completely cracks up. And I explained to her, I said, "Well, there used to be this television show with a Russian guy, and there was a squirrel and a moose, and he always said, must get moose and squirrel."
Boris, we must get moose and squirrel.
Moose and squirrel. Anyway.
Now,
I love languages and stuff like that. They always crack me up. The other day at Starbucks, remember, you and I, no one who's listening or in the chat room realizes that what you and I went through last Monday trying to get this thing to work. And we found out that it was Starbucks' fault because they grabbed my Wi-Fi and wouldn't let go. But the other day I was at Starbucks, and they have this bagel. They call it the everything bagel.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you're familiar with that. Anyway, so I'm standing in line, and this woman says, "Oh, and I want an anything bagel." And I went, and my mind just started to go, "An anything bagel? Man, what could that possibly be?" A bagel with a bicycle tire, an iron,
Or they just put a whole bunch of day olds in a bag and you just reach in and grab one.
No, it's anything. In other words, you can put anything on it. Shaving cream. Anyway, I thought it was funny, but nobody else liked it. So, okay, let's go on. What's up?
Well, I did have a couple of thoughts about if you would like to go into it. I know through the chat they have asked, and I know you've answered this a gajillion times, so forgive me, but on the creation of the Friday the 13th theme, what was your inspiration to be able, because it is undisputed an iconic horror theme that you could play the first four measures and people know exactly what it is.
You're not talking about the sound, you're talking about the score?
Yeah, the build up. Now, of course, I would say that the sound comes into it as well. So if you'd like to discuss both, that would be great.
Okay, hold on a second. I'm going to move. Okay, can you hear this? Could you hear that? Okay. All right. I'm sitting at the piano here. Friday the 13th has one sound that, to me, evokes the sound of what Friday the 13th is, Camp Crystal Lakes. And almost everything comes off this one particular chord. That chord is this. Can you hear that?
Yes.
Okay. What makes this chord sound the way it sound like what it is, okay, is the following. It's a combination of a whole tone scale chord, which is this part of it, and a whole tone scale is something that you hear in Debussy, and it's always used in something that's kind of mystical or magical. It usually sounds like this. It's kind of like in what are those two guys? What they do to dissolve? What is that? Who is that? Whatever. Like the screen gets blurry and it slides around.
Like doing Wayne's Wayne's World thing?
Yeah, Wayne's World. Yeah, those are, you know, it's a whole tone scale. Anyway, this chord is made up of 4 notes of that scale. Okay. However, there's another note in the chord, and it's this note. And that note creates probably the most dissonant interval there is. That just says something is not right. You hear what I'm saying? So there are two things that happen. This chord, and then I take that interval and I pile it on top of itself. So, and this is, you're going to go, oh my God, that's Friday the 13th. Ready? It's just a pile of that interval. You see what I'm saying? And then I just sort of clinkle on that. I just go. So if I play that chord like this, it's all made up of that same piece of material. One of the things about Friday the 13th is that it's made up of very little material, and that's one of the things that's sort of just it's oppressive almost because of the way how concise it always is.
I always thought it leaned towards a type of alien mystical quality.
Well, this is the mystical part. Although I never do that, but that sound, that sort of it's ambiguous. You don't get it. And then this part is like, things are not right. You don't, it's ambiguous and things are not right.
Yeah,
but for example, I mean, like this interval, I mean, now, if I said to you that this is Bernard Herrmann going, you know, yeah, turn it louder. Bernard Herrmann would be, that's Psycho. That's that interval. It just hurts. It's not a, yeah. It's that kind of a chord. And then in Friday the 13th, there's also a chord that belongs to Bernard Herrmann. Elfman uses it all the time. Everybody uses it, but Bernard Herrmann found it, and it's this chord. You know, I mean, if I played, you know, that sounds like Psycho. That's that kind of agitated sound in Psycho. Well, I take that chord, and the same thing, I pile it on top of itself till you get that. You've already got, and then I can even pile it further until you have 3 of them. And you got a chord that has almost every note in it.
And honestly, to me, it's disconcerting the way it sounds. So it fits in perfectly with horror, just because of the fact that
exactly
you're making the audience uncomfortable with the music itself.
Yeah, exactly. It is uncomfortable. That interval, that's just not a happy interval. I mean, there's only so many intervals. There's this. That's another unhappy one. You know, and then this one, not so much. That one actually sounds nice. And then finally, so there's only 11 intervals.
Well, but that
And
definitely.
the way you mix them together, you get what, the sound that you want.
Well, and I mean, when you're scoring something for atmosphere, I think around the time that you started with that, even if you go back to the Psycho soundtrack that you pulled up, there is kind of a melodic quality to it, which I
Yeah.
think he was using it more as a lull to the audience than as a build. If that makes sense.
Yeah. You got to remember, he may have gone. That's the way Psycho starts out on that chord. That this holy shit. This is called an ostinato, and it's obstinate. That's Psycho. But it's all every note I played there is based on that same chord.
Sure. Now,
So but I mean, like, what's funny about it is this. For example, this interval that I played for you before, which sounds like it's kind of like it's like it's nasty.
uh-huh.
For example, if I played that's Gilligan's Island. It's the same interval. You see, you can take that silly little thing and make it that.
Oh,
And if you listen to Mancini, a lot of Mancini songs end like this, which is that interval. It's cute.
once again denoting tone and atmosphere.
Exactly. That's why film composers are dramatists.
I would not disagree.
Yeah.
Now, as far as being able to incorporate sound into your into your scores, I know there's probably no greater example than Friday the 13th. Now I know, like I said, this question has been asked a gajillion times, but the audience is over it, so they want to know basically how did the sound come about? What is the sound?
The sound is Ki, the letter Ki, like, and ma, ma, like. So if are you still there?
I am.
Okay. For some reason, there I am. Okay. What it amounts to was this. Again, it's the reason that it happened is a dramatic reason, and no other reason. The problem, the dramatic problem of Friday the 13th is that Friday the 13th originally is a murder mystery. When you really think about it,
Oh yeah.
It's like who the hell is killing all these people, and up until you get to reel 9, you never see who's killing all the people. All you know is it's somebody, and so dramatically, the problem was, how do I let the audience know what they're seeing on the screen is not just the cameraman, but the person who's the killer. It's the eyes of the killer. It's a POV of the killer, not just the cameraman. So what I needed to do was create something, whether it's musical or whatever, that says, uh-oh, this is the killer, not the cameraman. All right. So one of the thoughts at the time was, Sean said to me, "Can we have a chorus?" And I just started laughing. I'm going like, "Chorus? We're barely going to have, we're going to have 13 guys in a basement in New Jersey. That's what we're going to have. So anyway, what happened to me was I got the idea from Betsy Palmer. Not she didn't tell me it, but she told me it when I watched the movie. There's a scene at the very end where you see a close up of Betsy Palmer's mouth, and she says, "Kill her, mommy," and it's the sound of Jason's voice, "Kill her, mommy, kill her, mommy," and then Betsy Palmer says it, "Kill her, mommy, kill her, mommy," and it goes back and forth. And at that point, I realized she hears voices. She's hearing the voices in her head. And that's what, and she's saying that all the time. So I took KI from kill and MA from mommy and went up to a microphone and went, and then Echo repeated it like it was in her head. And my phone is running out of juice, by the way. And I'm going to see if I can plug it in while I'm talking to you.
We'll get to the rap because we've almost gone two hours strong.
Anyway, so that's how it came about. So that every time the film was the killer, I just dropped in a KI and MA, Killer Mommy, and the rest is history. So a lot of people think it's a lot of things, and it's just that. And what happened is once the studios got it as a free piece of sound, they started dropping it in everywhere else, and it got cloned and distorted and reverbed and changed. So a lot of times I listen to it, I go, man, it doesn't even sound like what I did, but it's still that's what I did. So that's that.
It might be the sincere form of flattery.
Yeah, there you go. It worked. It was something that worked.
Yeah, and I think it worked very well. I mean, honestly, it's been going strong for what over 30 years. 35 years.
Yes.
And that's an amazing thing. I mean, I know as a writer, there's books that I've read that are over 100 years old, and are still in the popular vernacular, but to be able to make that kind of crossover where people have a tendency to throw away, I mean, it's a consumable society to where they'll take a taste and throw away the rest. That
right.
It stood the test of time. And I do want to make sure that people do check the description box down the bottom. The Harry Manfredini website is there. You can click on it and go to it. Once again, I do recommend if you got some money burning a hole in your pocket, definitely go out and make a purchase for Time Master. I know they released a huge box set for Friday the 13th.
Yes.
All the movies together, but I would still recommend Time Master and the Dual House soundtrack, House 1 and 2.
Right. And Wishmaster is pretty cool, and so is there's some really obscure ones there, and I think you'd get a kick out of music from the couch. It's interesting what's there.
And now all of that can also be sampled on Harry's website. So please feel free, go and check that out as well. And I mean, we're talking about 45 years plus of not only defining but crafting a skill, and it continues to go on. I have not heard any stagnation in some of the most recent stuff that you've done, and I've watched the the Friday the 13th video game, and even something that is standard, there's still a new twist on it.
Well, yeah, you have to. You could go a long way with that little chord, huh?
Wow, you're definitely going farther than I am. The only thing I can play is a juice harp, and I had to chip a few teeth to figure that one out.
That's right, right.
But is there anything that you would like to impart to the chat that's listening right now, those who are young music makers, those who are aspiring to become a composer, get into not necessarily the movie industry, but into crafting an auditory piece?
Well, the only thing and this is something that I say to the kids at the colleges when I do my lectures, and I say, it's a funny thing. There are two aspects to this stuff, and one of them is the creative process, and this is I'm gonna tie a whole bunch of things together. So what's gonna sound like three different concepts are all the same concept.
Go for it.
You see something. It's a painting, or it's a piece of music, or it's a book, or it's a poem. It's a piece of dance. It's a film, and you say, well, that's a work of art. Okay. The art is not the actual thing. That's a piece of art. The work of art is the process from with which the piece of art is created. The artistic part is the part in the middle. You as a writer know that you're edited. Everybody was edited. Friggin' Ernest Hemingway was edited. William Faulkner was edited. Stravinsky edits his music. We sit and write our music, but we don't just sit down and write the piece. When Beethoven wrote the Fifth Symphony, he didn't write it in 20 minutes. That's how long it takes to play. He wrote it in I think it took him like 3.5 years. So the process is the art. The finished thing is the work of art, but it's a piece of art. So the other thing is, like, if you're trying to do something, whether it's a piece of music or you want to write or you want to make a film or something like that, you study everything. You learn as much as you can about these things. I still study music theory. I still study ways approaching to music because they become skills. It's like if you're a pitcher, you learn to throw a knuckleball, or you learn to throw a curve or a slider or whatever. You don't just start doing that. You learn how to do that. Then you learn how to make it work for you. Then you know how to create things from it. But you get that from studying what other people did, and you make it your own. You work that into your own self. And now the last thing is this. Whether you're a writer or a composer or a filmmaker or something, the thing that got you started was something that touched you very early on. I say this to the film composers and young people. I said, we're all sitting here and we all went to college and we all learned to listen to what kind of chord that was, or what form that was, or what scale was being used, or the orchestration. We learned all the mechanics of all those things. But a long time ago, when we were very young, when I was 5 or 6 years old, I sat there and watched the movies with my mother, and the music touched me. And I listened to Puccini, and I listened to Stan Kenton, and I listened to music, and I didn't know jack shit about harmony. I didn't know anything about drama. I didn't know about anything. All I know is that that music touched me, and that's where you've got to go every time you start. That's where the music is. The music is not in knowing what the chords are, and knowing what this is, or knowing what that is. It's being able to express what touches you, and you got to go back to that very first time. People make films, they go like, "Oh wow, I saw this movie. It was amazing. It was I saw that." That's when movie touched you. That's when you read a book and you went, "Oh my God, this is so imaginative. I'm seeing things. I'm feeling things that are evoked from the writing." The problem is that that's what touched you. You learn how to write, you learn how to do the process, but you always go back to that moment or that time when you didn't know anything about it, but at the same time it touched you. And that's what my advice would be, to just and don't give up, because if you listen from the beginning of this chat we had, you know that I sat in a room and just hoped that someday I'd be sitting in a room like I am. And I didn't know how it was going to happen, but slowly but surely it did.
Well, and I
Anyway,
know that
that's what I have to say.
well, and I know that passion should always be your motivation. I mean, you've got your
Right,
second job to be able to earn your money to keep, food and shelter. But if you don't have something that you're passionate about, then you are truly missing out on the real life experience. You have to be able to grab that by the reins and write it hard, put it away wet every night.
right. And like I said, go back to that time when you were touched by whatever art it happened to be. You were touched by it. Go back to that place. Learn everything you can about how to do it, how people do it. There's a great book called Psycho Cybernetics. You're too young probably to remember it, but it talks about uh, how do you. It talks about a missile that doesn't know anything. All it does is it traces if you have a missile, this thing just follows right behind it. Wherever it goes, it does that. Find out what a composer does every day and start doing that every day, and you'll find out that eventually you can do it.
Oh,
But you
sure.
find out that you learn. Somebody goes, "Well, I'm a writer." Well, do you write? No, I don't write. But you have to write every day. That's what writers do.
Yep, we sure
Uh,
do.
people, people who can dance, people who are making films, they're watching films every day. They're writing scripts. They're looking to see how people did things. They're looking at the lighting. They're looking at every single thing about a film. Every day it's something. But
And
remember,
seriously, there
but
is
but but always go back to that place, the very first time you were touched by whatever it happens to be.
and
Every time I hear Puccini, I go right back to that first time I heard it. The
and
power of that.
and there is really no taboo with taking something that you love, dissecting it, finding out how it works, and
Yes,
how it works on you to be able
right,
to add that to your repertoire to expand yourself.
exactly. And you have to do that every day.
Without a doubt, because if you're not learning, you're not living.
Hello.
And it's, well, like I used to say on my old radio show, never give up on your dreams, because your dreams never give up on you.
That's
But
right.
it's not like it's going to happen overnight. You got to put in the work for it.
You do. You do.
And
Anyway, my phone is like blinking and saying, I think I'm down to like 9%. So
well
I, I
then,
don't I don't want to just go bump and go away. So
let me do the outro on this. Um,
cool.
and once again, I know I can speak for the chat to say that this was an awesome conversation. It was great to be able to listen to someone who is legitimately a legend in their field, and to find out what it takes and how you did it. And it is truly inspirational. So from the chat and from myself, thank you very much for spending time with us. I think we can close this case. And,
okay.
And until, of course, you're always welcome to stop back by with us. But I will say this: I enjoyed every minute of it. And of course, this is coming from the doctor's office. I'm going to close the window, and we will see you next week. We have Rex Effects Studios. They are creature and model makers from Hollywood, and we will be talking to them, picking their brains and solving their ills. So once again, this is your doctor, Doc Griffin, signing off for the evening. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff.